Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be making a little app that I like to call Picturegram. So for Picturegram, you guys are going to be using some of those photos that you took of technology being used around the school, but I'm going to be using some of these pictures from my vacation a couple summers ago. So I'm going to get started from scratch and try to recreate this on video. I might need to use this as a cheat sheet because I wrote it last year, but we'll see how I do. Alright, so first things first, we've got a Picturegram HTML file. And that's going to be located in the same folder as all of our images so that our HTML file has access to these assets immediately. So here we go. Less than HT tab gives us our whole structure. So then I'm going to call this Picturegram for the tech blog. But mine won't be about tech, yours will. All right, next up, I'm going to introduce in the body of this a new element called a div. So what a div is it's an element that comes with no properties of its own. And it's frequently used as a box to hold a group of things. So if you look at this, you can see the div is actually this whole white section here that contains my whole project. And then outside of that, we've got this little gray background. So a div is like a box that comes with no properties of its own and is often used to hold a group of elements and give them a set of styles. So I'm going to give that div an ID so I can style it, and that ID is going to be content. Next up within that div, I'm going to put all of the content from my project. So I'm going to have an h1 header called Picturegram, and then I'm going to have a bunch of images. So image, and then the source is going to be image1.png. No, I think it's JPG for me. Let me check. And these file names have to exactly match the file names that you have in your folder. And I'm going to ignore alt text for this project for now, just for the sake of the video. So I'm going to copy and paste this a whole bunch of times. Let's see how I did there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Got one extra. I think I have 11 total pictures that I'm going to be using. Yeah, I do. Awesome. All right, so let's give this a save and let's give it a refresh. So right away, my pictures are way too large. But if I think about the way that Picturegram looks and the way I lay out those pictures, it looks to me like there are two different kinds of pictures. We've got a main pic here, and then some smaller pictures here. So the main pic is going to have a unique set of styles of its own. So I'm going to give the first picture here an ID so I can uniquely style it. And I'm going to call it Big Pic. Now, the rest of these images are all small pics, so I'm just going to give these all an identifier as well. IDs are not good here, though, because we want to refer to this group as having the same properties. So this will be a class equals small pic. And I'm going to give this class to all of my other pictures. All right, so what this will let us do is it will let us style the big pic and the small pics differently. So let's give this a save and a refresh. So currently nothing's changed because we haven't applied any styles, but let's change that right now. So thinking about making it look like this, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set up some of these pictures. So I got my style tags, and let's see. I did some experimenting with measurements earlier, and I'm going to start by doing, let's see, I'm going to make my H1 have a couple of properties. So its font size is going to be 50 pixels. We haven't talked too much about this, but I'm going to make the margin of that 0 pixels. So margin is going to be the distance between the words and the stuff around it. Next up, I'm going to take my images and I'm going to give them all a border. Actually, you know what? I'll hold off on that for a little bit. I'm going to style all the images a certain way, but not yet. Next up, I'm going to select my main pic, and for my main pic, I'm going to give it a width that is calculated by taking 100% of the total width and then subtracting 10 pixels. And for my small pics, I'm going to do a smaller width. So for the small pics, I'm going to take a calculation and do 33% minus 13 pixels. Now each one of these, similar to the header one, is going to have a margin, which is the space in between the images. So in my case, I want to add a margin of 5 pixels to both the main pic and the small pic. So I'm going to give this a save and a refresh. All right, that didn't work because I'm not calling it main pic this year. Sorry, I'm calling it big pic this year. I'm using last year's name. So now if I say big pic, this will have a hopefully apply. All right, great. So we've got a really nice setup already. We've got our big picture, and we've got a bunch of small pictures as well. Now, we need to add some more style to these. So I'm going to go to the div, which is the case that holds everything. And I'm going to make that div now have some properties. So the first thing that's a problem is that I resize this, it really starts to mess up the way that the page looks. I'd like it to have this app-like feel where no matter what size it is, it's always, the same size. So I'm going to take that div and I'm going to give it a fixed width. And I'm not selecting it with div actually. I want to select it with its name. So since it's ID equals content, I'll do, instead of div, hashtag content. So it'll find the thing with ID of content, and then it will style it like so, with 550 pixels. And I'm going to put the margin to auto. And similar to how margin auto, along with display block, centers pictures, this margin auto will actually center my app. So here we go. So I've got this nice app. It would help me a little more if I could see it. So I'm just going to give it an ugly background, something maybe red. Actually, that's going to be too ugly. Something maybe yellow. So save and to refresh. All right, so that's a little easier to see, at least for now. Next up, I'm going to give it a couple of other things to make it easier to see. I'm going to give it a border radius. So my app here is a little bit curved, if you can see. A border radius is going to make it a little bit curved, so 5 pixels. And now we've got a nice little curve there. The H1 would look a little better if it was centered, so text align center. I would like the H1 to have a better font, so I'm going to search on Google Fonts. So now from Google Fonts, my favorite font for this is actually called Lobster, and I'm just really familiar with that Google font, so I'm just going to search for it right away. So Lobster kind of has that Instagram-y cursive look to it, so I'm going to add that to my selection. I'm going to click this little export link, and then remember there are 2 steps to using a Google font. You have to link in the source, which goes above the style tag, and then once you link in the source, you have to give this font family to the thing you're trying to give that font family to. So for me, it's the H1. So I'll save that, and I'll refresh it here. And that didn't work, actually. Let's see why. So save it, and oh, now it worked. Okay, cool. Now it's loaded the Google font Picturegram, and that starts to look a little more like Instagram, which is nice. All right, next up, I noticed that the elements here are really close to the border of this div. And so we said margin is the space outside of an element, between 2 elements. Like here, this little gap between the pictures, that's the margin. If we want to put space inside of an element, that's called padding, and we'll talk more about this. But I'm going to add some padding to my div, which should put some space on the inside of my div and give it some cushioning from the outside. So let's see. I'm going to give a padding of 20 pixels on my div. So save it and refresh it. And that looks a lot better already. Now, just to show you distinction, I'm going to make the body, the background of the page, have a color. So the body of my page, that will be, I don't know, green. And now you can really see that pictogram layout standing out in contrast to the body. Looks like a flag of some sort. All right, so things are starting to come along pretty good. We've got this nice setup. We've got all of our images loaded. One thing that we might think to add is it might be nice to put a border around our images, but this actually causes a bit of a problem. So let's see why. So I'm going to take my images and I'm going to add a border around all of them. So borders are specified using a couple of arguments. So in my case, it'll be 2 pixels, solid, turquoise. Save it and refresh it. And you'll notice that when I added that border, it messed up the alignment of the whole setup. And the reason why this messes up the alignment of the whole setup is it added the border to the outside of the image, which unfortunately messes up all of these calculations that we did for the width. Now, I'm going to actually show you how to fix this. So in order to fix this, we want the border not to be on the outside of the image, but the border to actually go inwards to the image so it doesn't resize it. And the way you do that is you add another property to your image, which is box sizing border box. So then save that and refresh it. And now it fixes the alignment again so that the borders go inside of the image instead of outside. All right, 2 pixels is a little small, so I'm going to change that to 4 pixels, and I like that a little better. Then the last thing I'm going to do is it would be nice to have a little bit of interactability with this, so I'm going to add a hover effect to my images. So images with the pseudo selector hover, I'm going to change the border to the exact same settings, 4 pixels solid, but I'm going to change it to magenta when you hover over it. And now we've got that nice magenta image. So this would be a pretty complete project, and there's a variety of ways that you can actually improve this object. Not this project, sorry, I don't know what I just said actually. I hope I said project. This project, and I'm not sure we're going to do any of them. I think this might be complete enough for today.